Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our virtual chat program, streamed live on the American Spaces in Uzbekistan Facebook and YouTube channels. I'm Gulshan from American Center Tashkent, and it's my great pleasure to introduce our speaker today, an American educator and a runner, Heather McNemar. Hi, Heather.
Hi, Gulshan. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good.
Thanks so much for taking the time to do this chat with us.
Oh, I'm excited. I'm excited to talk about running.
Yeah. So, Heather, you completed 12 marathons in 6 different countries, right?
This is true. Yes, I'm going to tell more about that today.
Okay, that's amazing. Wow. So when Heather is not running, she taught English to adults, and she worked as an English teacher, and she's also a counselor for people who are looking for jobs. So that's interesting. And Heather moved to Uzbekistan with her family in August and is looking forward to running in the Samarkand Half Marathon in November. So, Heather, it's very exciting to hear from you tonight about running and how people can train for and compete in marathons or any other races. Thanks so much, and over to you.
Excellent. Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to talk about running. Whenever I get the chance to tell people about running and try and convince them to also become runners, I always take it because as the title of my presentation says, running has changed my life for the good. And so I would like to try and convince other people that it can change their life as well. And I am hoping tonight that we can talk to each other about your running and running here in Uzbekistan. And I'll tell you a little bit about my running and my experiences and how I feel like it's had a positive influence on my life. You can see from this picture, which is from the Berlin Marathon, that I don't take running very seriously. I like to have fun with it. And it's something that has brought a lot of joy into my life. I actually did not look like this for the entire race. I saw the photographer, and one of the things that I've learned in all of my races is that when you see the photographer, you should always smile and make a really happy face so you can get good pictures that look like this. But the rest of the time, I did not have this look on my face. I was not looking as happy. So today I'm going to be talking about road running, which is different from track and field. My experience is mostly with road running. I did do a little bit of track and field when I was in high school, but my interest is in road running. So we'll be talking about some different races. And so at the beginning, I wanted to go over what the different races are and what the difference is between them, because sometimes people hear marathon and they think, oh, that's just any kind of race, or they're not sure what these words mean. So I wanted to go over this at the beginning. So the most popular race in the world is the 5K, which is 5 kilometers long. Another popular race is the 10K, which is 10 kilometers, obviously, in the name. It's interesting to me that in the United States, we use those names of 5 kilometers and 10 kilometers, and people seem to have figured out how long they are. Another popular race is the 10 miler, which is 16 kilometers long about. You have the half marathon, which is 21 kilometers. A marathon is 42 kilometers. And then an ultra marathon is anything over 42 kilometers. So it might be 50 kilometers or 50 miles or maybe even 100 miles or 100 kilometers. And ultra marathons tend to be run on trails and less on the road, but sometimes you run into ultra marathons that might be run on the road or might include parts that are road races. And some terms that I might use tonight that I wanted to explain before we started are PR, which means a personal record, or your fastest time for a distance. So you might say to someone, oh, which day? Oh, it's 3:15. You say, oh yeah, okay, my PR is 3:10, so I'm faster than you. People also sometimes say PB, which is a personal best. A kind of negative term is DNF, which means did not finish. And you use that when you started a race, but you didn't, for some reason, you didn't finish it. And then when we describe runners, we sometimes call someone a mid-pack runner or a back-of-the-pack runner. And the pack is the group of runners, like a pack of dogs or a pack of wolves. A back-of-the-pack runner is someone who is slower and would finish towards the end. And a mid-pack runner is someone who's kind of average or in the middle of the group. So someone might use those terms to describe themselves. I used to be a mid-pack runner, sometimes front of the mid-pack runner, but I've gotten slower as I've gotten older. So I'm now kind of inching towards the back of the pack, but that's okay. Everybody is still having fun in races. So talking about some statistics that I wanted to share with you about running around the world. And I pulled these off the internet, so hopefully they are true. But in my own life, I've seen how popular running has become. The statistic here is that running has grown in popularity by 57% over the past 10 years. And I wonder if that is maybe even more after the pandemic and the number of people who took up running during that. In 2017, 621 million people ran worldwide. I don't know if that means they ran races or they ran for the bus or they ran for fun, but that's a lot of people running. And I've seen running go from something that a very few number of people did. I remember when I was growing up, there were people who were runners who were always really, really serious. And you would see them and they would have like special clothes and they would be running really fast and they were taking it very seriously. And you didn't see as many people who were just out running for themselves or running slowly or maybe not training for races. So that's something that has changed in my life that I've been glad to see. In this graph here, I wanted to show this to you because it shows how the popularity of races has changed from 2001 to 2018. And if you look, you can see that the yellow line is 5K races. The orange line is 10K races. The green line is the half marathon, and the black line is the marathon. So you notice there that the 5K, as I said, is the most popular race. But then the popularity of the half marathon has also gotten much more in this time period. And I'm wondering if you have any ideas of why that might be. Why do you think the 5K and the half marathon have become so popular around the world? If you put your answers in the chat, then we will take a look at them and see what your ideas are about what the reason is behind this. I was thinking about, well, if the distances are short, but then the 10K would also be popular. And it's become more popular, but not as much as the half marathon. So what do you think? What are the reasons why we've seen the half marathon become so popular? Any ideas? Why don't I go on to the next slide, and Gulshan, let me know if there are comments with ideas about why that might be.
Sure. Oh, wait, we have one answer here.
Oh, good. Yes.
Eleanor Habinovsky is saying, I think that it sounds impressive, but it isn't as hard as a marathon.
Oh, okay. So people might be doing it because it's not as hard as a marathon, maybe not as hard to train for it. Interesting, but still harder than a 10K.
Mm-hmm. And one more comment from Sharon Lee Hong. More prestigious to run half marathon?
Yeah, maybe more prestigious to say I've run a half marathon rather than saying I've run a 10K. Interesting. Mm-hmm. I agree. I think people, oh, another comment.
Mm-hmm.
Muffy says, it feels like you may make it to a real marathon, or you could kind of hide the half part, right? Yeah, yes, I ran a marathon, and it might sound more impressive. Yeah, I think that's true. Okay, we have another comment, because it requires less power of a runner, maybe. I definitely think that's true, and less time for training. Taking the time to train for a marathon can be a big time commitment. So yeah, you don't need as much power to do the half marathon or as much time for training. Great, thank you for your comments. All right, let's go on to talking about running in the US, so you get a sense of what the situation is there. So about 50 million Americans, which is 15% of the population, participate in some form of running. So as I said, running has become very popular in the United States, and a third of those people are between the ages of 18 to 24. So running is popular with all ages of people, but especially with young people. And a lot of the Americans who are running are also registering for road races. So in 2018, 18 million Americans registered for and ran, hopefully, a road race. And the 5K, like in the rest of the world, is the most popular race. In the United States, it's common for towns or different organizations to run 5Ks. We even have a special kind of 5K on our holiday of Thanksgiving, which is called a turkey trot. And many people on the morning of Thanksgiving, so on that Thursday morning, will go and run a 5K turkey trot in their hometown so that they can do something together with their family and get some exercise before they sit down to eat a lot of food. As you may know, Thanksgiving is a holiday when we eat a lot of food. So many people like to start the day by exercising and running in a 5K. So it makes sense that the 5K is the most popular race in the United States. Next, I'd like to talk about women and running. And as I'm talking about this slide, if you could, in the chat, answer the question that's here, which is, why do you think running has become so popular, particularly with women around the world? So, as I said, the popularity of running has increased for everybody, men and women, but it has particularly increased for women. And what do you think the reasons for that might be? And also let me know, is that true here in Uzbekistan as well? Has running become more popular with women? So if you could put those answers in the chat, that would be great. So in 2018, this is about the entire world, not just the United States. In 2018, for the first time in history, more women than men ran in races. And you can see it's just over 50%. So it's still about 50-50, but just over 50% of participants in races became women, which is a big deal because in 1986, it was less than 20%. So we went from less than 20% of runners in races being women to a little bit more than 50%, which is a big increase. And in terms of running in different countries, Iceland, interestingly, has the highest percentage of women who run races, and the United States has the second highest. And I've seen among my friends and other women my age that people have become very interested in running, and it's something that women seem to gravitate towards. And what do you think about that? What do you think is the reason for that, or why that might be? What would be appealing about running to, particularly to women? So Sharon says it's exercise that can be worked around busy schedules that women usually juggle, like work and childcare. Yeah, so that's a good point. It's flexible, and it's something that you can do when you have time, when you're not doing the other things that you have to do. Great. And Eleanor says, I think that more women are running because women are feeling more empowered, and it's an easy and fun way to exercise. Excellent. Any other ideas? And also my other question, is that true in Uzbekistan as well? Have more women in Uzbekistan started running like in the rest of the world? Have you seen that trend here? I think another aspect of it is the social aspect, that many women enjoy meeting their friends for coffee and socializing and talking. And if they could do that while running, they're kind of doing two things at once, and they're able to both exercise and be social at the same time. I know when I was living in the United States, there were many running groups that were just for women, where women would meet up with their friends and get the chance to socialize. All right, so that's some general information about the running situation. And I wanted to tell you about my personal running history and how I came to fall in love with running. It all started back when I was in middle school, and I decided that I wanted to join the basketball team, except I didn't know how to play basketball. I had never played before, and so I didn't make the basketball team, and I decided instead to run on the cross country team. So cross country is a sport that most middle school and high schools have, and the students run usually a little bit less than 5K races outside, usually around the school or like in parks or forests nearby. And they would take anyone. You didn't need to try out for the cross country team. So in 7th grade, I started running, and I ran cross country all the way through high school. And I was okay. I was like a middle of the pack runner. I wasn't terrible, but I wasn't great. But I made a lot of friends that way, and I really enjoyed it. But when I went to college, I decided not to continue running because the running team at the cross country team at my college was very competitive. And there were many people on the team who had been recruited, which means that because they were good runners in high school, they were invited to come to the college and run for the college. And I wasn't good enough to do that. And I was nervous to try to join the team. So I decided to join the rowing team, the crew, because they would take anyone. Again, I didn't have to try out. I didn't have to know. And when I started rowing, I found out that I didn't like rowing. I didn't like being in the boat. I didn't like being on the water, but I really liked the training. So when we were in the gym, when we were running, when we were getting stronger, I liked that part of it. So I did that for a year, and then I decided just to continue on my own to run. And when I was in college, I ran 2 half marathons, and I really liked the training for that because it was a lot of work, and I put a lot of time and effort into it, and I could see the results of my training. And then after college, I moved to Boston, Massachusetts, which is where I'm from. And I ran some smaller races there, and then I did run a marathon there. But I put an asterisk here because I ran it without being an official entry into it, which you're not supposed to do, and I don't recommend. So that wasn't an official race, but that was the first time that I had run that distance of 42 kilometers. And as I continued running as an adult, the race that I really, really like is marathons. And people always say, like, you're crazy. Marathons are so long and they're so hard. And that's true. They are very long and they're very hard. But I have found that I really enjoy the process of training for the marathon, that I like the buildup. I like putting the work in and seeing the results. And the way that I'm more successful as a runner is when I have more time. So short races aren't good for me, but longer races have been. And just a quick history of how the marathon came to be. I don't know if you know this story, but the first marathon was in 1896 in the Olympics. They were having the Olympics in Greece, and they decided that they wanted to have a race from Marathon, Greece to Athens, Greece, to commemorate a story, an incident that had happened where back in 490, when a man battle was won in Greece, and they sent a soldier to run to Athens a battle was won in Marathon, the town, and they sent a soldier to run to Athens to give the news to the people that they had won. And so this man left Marathon and he ran to Athens. He said, "We won, we were victorious." And then he died. And for some reason, they decided that they would commemorate that by having a race that went the same distance. So that first marathon in 1896 was it was less than 42 kilometers. It was about 25 miles long, so 41 kilometers. And after that, the distance of the marathon changed. It wasn't always the same until about 1908, when the Olympics were held in London, and they wanted to have the marathon go past the royal family while they were sitting in their box so that the royal family could see the runners. So in order to do that, they needed to make the marathon longer, and they made it 42 kilometers. And after that, the distance was set, and from then on, marathons were 42 kilometers. But it does tell you something about people who love marathons, that the origin story of it does have someone dying at the end. Makes it seem pretty serious and not something to mess with. So this is a little bit about my marathon history. As Gulshan mentioned, I have run 12 marathons in 6 different countries. I have been lucky to be able to run in different marathons when we've lived in different places around the world. We moved from my husband's job and live in different places for 2 or 3 years. So when we were living in Kiev, Ukraine, I was able to run the Rome Marathon in Italy. And then when we lived in Brazil, I ran the Rio de Janeiro Marathon, which was way too hot. Oh my goodness. It was in the winter in Brazil. So I thought it was going to be colder, but no, it was very hot. But I did get to finish running along the Ipanema beach, which was really cool. And then we moved back to the United States, and I ran a lot of marathons in the United States, including the one in New York City and the one in Chicago. And you can see I've run the Boston Marathon a couple of times, and I'll talk about why that's my favorite marathon next. After the US, we lived in Belgium, which is the last place we lived before Uzbekistan. And 2019 was my big year, where I ran 3 marathons, one in France, in Paris, and then one in Belgium and one in Germany. And you can see in the picture, that's my husband and I at the Brussels Beer Marathon. So that was an unusual marathon. All the other marathons I've done have been pretty normal, but the beer marathon was unusual because it had 15 stops for beer. So you can see where we carried those plastic cups, and 15 times we stopped and try different kinds of beer. And when we were training, we actually had to train to drink beer during our races. So we did one 21-mile run where we had a 7-mile loop back to our house. So we did 7 miles, came back and drank a beer, then did 7 more miles. And that was really unusual. I said to my husband, this is not how I usually train for a marathon, but it was a unique experience. And you can see I'm wearing my Wonder Woman costume. It was a costume marathon too. So something that was a cool experience that I was glad I got to do while we were in Belgium. And out of all the marathons that I've run, my favorite is the Boston Marathon. As I said, I am from Boston, and my parents and my sister still live there. So it's kind of like my hometown marathon. I grew up hearing about it, and I really like the fact that it feels like home when I run it. The Boston Marathon is one of the oldest marathons. It started in 1897, so right after the first marathon was run in the Olympics. So they are going to be running the 125th Boston Marathon. Is actually happening this Monday. Usually the Boston Marathon is in April on a holiday that only happens in Boston called Patriots Day. So it's really cool because everyone has the day off and they come out to cheer for the runners. And it makes the city kind of feel like a party as you're coming in because so many people are out on the streets. The only problem is the weather in Boston in April can be just terrible. You can see in the picture, there was one year where it was raining and 30 degrees the entire time. I've never in my entire life run in such bad weather before. I couldn't believe that I had finished because it was so awful out there. And then another year, you can see I was wearing sunglasses because it was so hot. But my favorite thing about the Boston Marathon, besides being there in my hometown, is getting to see my family and friends as I'm running. And in the bottom right picture, you can see me with my friend Nancy, who lives along the Boston Marathon course. And every time I run it, she comes out to cheer for me, and we try to get a picture on the Boston Marathon course. So a lot of the reason why I love running is the connections that I make with people, and to see my family and friends out cheering for me is really, really cool. So this is a map of the Boston Marathon course. And Boston is unique because it's what's called a point-to-point marathon. So instead of running in a loop, and usually you would start in one place and then run in a loop and then end up in a similar place. That's the way most marathons are. But Boston, you have to take a bus out to the start and then you run back. And that bus ride is really hard because, at least for me, I was thinking the whole time, oh my goodness, this is so far. I can't believe we have to run all the way back. But you start in the town of Hopkinton, Massachusetts, and then you run through different towns all the way back into Boston, which is where the finish is. And a couple of highlights for me along the Boston Marathon course are, you can see at the halfway point where it says Wellesley, that's where Wellesley College is, which is an all-women's college. And all of the women from the college, it seems like, come out to cheer. And I've been in a lot of races. I have never heard such loud cheering in my entire life. It's just incredible. As you're running, you can hear the noise before you can even see them. So that's really cool at the halfway point because it kind of gives you a push to keep going. And then you can see where it says Newton and there's a picture of a broken heart. That's what's known as Heartbreak Hill. Now, if you look at the bottom chart, that's an elevation chart. You can see that according to the chart, the course goes downhill. So you start and you're supposedly going downhill. It doesn't feel like it, but according to the chart, you are, except for at mile 20 begins Heartbreak Hill. So mile 20 in any marathon is when it gets really difficult. You have 6 miles or about 10K left to run. And usually by that point, you're tired, you're hungry, your legs hurt, you just want to be done. And for many people, that's the distance that they ran in their training. And so it's hard mentally to push yourself beyond that point. And people will talk about in a marathon hitting a wall, which is when you just don't feel like you can keep going. And in the Boston Marathon, that's when you have to run these hills. So they're really hard and they make this marathon much more difficult than other marathons that I've run. But as I said, my family is usually out there and they cheer at Heartbreak Hill. So that helps me to get over it. But it makes the Boston Marathon challenging in unique ways. All right, so that was a little bit about my background in running. And now I want to try and convince you that you should start running, or you should continue running, or you should think about running. Because as I said, running has been a real positive in my life. And it has taught me a lot of lessons that I feel like I use in other aspects of my life as well. That hard work pays off. That I can overcome difficulties, and that if I put work into something, I can succeed at it, and other things that I'll mention as well. So I wanted to give you some advice about how you can start running and hopefully achieve the same feelings and success as well. So one of the good things now is that there is a lot of information out there about running. The popularity of running has led to a big increase in information that's available to you. You can find training plans, you can find apps. I really recommend if you're training for a race that if you're looking for a free plan, that you can use Hal Higdon's training plans, or look for something like a Couch to 5K plan, which assumes that you don't have any background in running, you haven't run, and they train you to get to a 5K. When you start running, it's always a good idea to start slow. That's going to be my big advice. A lot of times people think like, okay, I'm going to start running. It's my New Year's resolution. And they go out and they run maybe for 30 minutes and maybe they feel okay or it's not too bad. But then the next day, their legs hurt or they don't want to do it, and they get frustrated and they quit. So in order to try and avoid that, a good way to do it is to start slow by alternating running and walking. So maybe running for 3 minutes, walking for 2 minutes, running for 3 minutes, walking for 2 minutes. And there's some people who use that method to all the way through running a marathon. There are people who run and walk a marathon. So it's a good way to ease into the training. Of course, I have to say, if you decide to take up running, it's always a good idea to talk to your doctor, especially if you run into any problems, to not run if you get injured. Unfortunately, injuries are a part of running. As I get older, I find that's more and more true. I've been dealing with a hamstring injury basically since 2019. Maybe I ran too many marathons that year, but I really recommend listening to your body and taking care of yourself, because the goal is to try and run for as long as possible. So if you are injured, to make sure that you take a break and don't keep running on an injury. So when you get started running, you want to start slowly, as I said, and increase your time or your distance bit by bit. So again, not going from 15 minutes one day to 30 minutes the next day to 45 minutes the next day. And that's, again, where a plan that someone else who knows what they're doing has written will help you with how to increase your mileage or your time. It's important to not just run the same distance, but to vary your routine. So maybe when you start, you do a couple days of running, a couple days of doing a class or biking or doing some other type of activity. Again, just constantly running will be difficult on your body. It's also really important to take days off. And people are always surprised when I say this, but when I train for a marathon, I'm only running 4 days a week. And I'm not running at marathon pace all of those days. A lot of those days are easy days or days when I'm just on my feet and running. But I really value those days off, because that's what gives your body a chance to rest and recover. And if you don't take those days, you're more likely to be injured. So again, some of the best runners in the world understand the value of taking time off and letting your body recover. I think it's really important to make running a habit, so that it's something that you're doing all the time and you don't have to think about it. I prefer to run in the morning, because I kind of start doing it before I'm really awake or I know what's going on. I kind of trick myself into doing it. Other people prefer to run in the evening, but I recommend that you find a time that works for you and really stick to it, because when you're trying to fit running in here or there, or any kind of exercise, you're more likely not to do it if it's not something that's become your routine. So put it on your calendar and make it part of your routine. Motivation. So this is really important, that when you start running, after the initial excitement or the beginning part wears off, it's hard. It's hard to motivate yourself. It's hard to get out there. Maybe it's cold, maybe it's raining, maybe you don't feel like it. So it's important to find ways to motivate yourself. And those can be different for different people. For some people, it's setting a goal. So telling yourself, I know this race is coming up. I want to be able to run on it. So that's going to be my goal. Or maybe it's just a certain distance that you want to run. You say, you know what? I want to run 10K in 6 weeks. I'm going to tell all of my friends, and on this Saturday at 10 a.m., I'm going to run 10K, and then we're all going to go out and celebrate. But setting it up so that you have something that you're working towards, so that you understand why you're doing it will be motivating for you. It's important to remember when training that completion of a race, finishing a race, winning a race, doing well in a race is not based on one single day. It's based on all the days that led up to that. It's a bunch of small steps that together lead up to a big success. And it's important that you celebrate your progress along the way. Even if it seems small, if you feel proud of it, if it's something that you didn't think you could do, be excited for yourself. Post it on social media. Tell your friends about it. Tell your family about it. But celebrate your small victories along the way, because those will add up to bigger victories. One of the great things about running is the people that you meet. And I think it's important to have running friends, people that you can either run with or that can hold you accountable, that you will both be going out to run, or that they will be encouraging you in running. So maybe you have a friend that you always text before you go running and say, okay, I'm heading out. And they say, all right, you can do it. Or you have a friend that you meet up with. But involving other people, joining running groups is a great way to stay motivated and to keep running, and to meet other people as well. So when we talk about running, a big aspect of running is the mental aspect of it. And people say that where the mind goes, the body follows. And I believe it's really important to train your mind as well as your body, because in my experience, your mind can sometimes be your worst enemy. It can convince you that you want to stop, or that you're tired, or that you shouldn't run anymore. And part of training and learning to love running is changing that behavior, changing those negative thoughts into positive ones. And that's something that you have to work at, that takes some time. It's training your mind, again, as much as your body. I believe in the power of positive thinking. I believe that you can visualize and see in your mind positive things happening, and that will help you in making them happen in real life. A lot of people run into the situation where they're doing a run and those negative thoughts start to come in, and they want to stop, or they don't want to run anymore, and they don't know how to deal with that. And one piece of advice that I would give would be to try, and when those things start to happen, maybe have a word, like a mantra that you use, that you start to repeat to yourself, like confident or strong or I can do it. And you start repeating that over and over again. So that becomes what you're hearing in your head and not the negativity. Another thing that helps me is to try and give yourself small goals that you can achieve during the run. So if you start thinking that you're tired and you want to stop, then give yourself a small goal. Instead of like, oh, shoot, I have to run 10 more minutes. You think, okay, I'm just going to run to that car up there, or I'm just going to run to that tree. And then when you get there, you give yourself another goal, because it's easier for your mind to focus on those smaller goals rather than on big goals. I do that when I'm running a marathon. It's too much for my brain to think about 26 miles. So I try to break it down into smaller pieces that I know I can do. So I know I can run 5K. All right, I'm just running 5K. I just think about that. Then when I finish that, I think about the next 5K. And again, I sort of trick myself into being able to run the whole marathon. Another piece of advice that I heard once was that when you're having a bad run or you're feeling those negative feelings, that you should smile. So I try to do this when I'm running, and sometimes it doesn't really look like a smile, but sort of like painful. But again, you're tricking yourself into like, I'm happy, I'm running, this is great. And that could help you with turning those negative thoughts into positive ones. All right. So to finish, I want to talk about, again, why running is awesome, and kind of recap the reasons why, for me, it's been a positive force in my life, and why I think you should take up running as well. So the first reason is that running is simple. You don't need special equipment. You just need shoes, maybe some special clothes, but you're pretty much good to go if you have shoes and a place to run. You get results out of running. One thing that I really love about running is that when you start to do it, you see that you get out of it what you put into it. So you find yourself being able to run a little bit longer. You find yourself feeling a little bit stronger. Your breathing is a little bit easier. And that's the result of your hard work. And as I said before, I really love that feeling. Running is flexible. You can do it however you want to. You can choose to do it on your own or with other people. You can train for a race or not. You can run the same distance every day, which I said not to do because that's a good way to get injured, or you can mix it up. Remember when we were talking about women in running, Sharon mentioned that one of the reasons why running is appealing to women is because it can be flexible around your schedule. As I said, I love the running community. I think of running as a great way to meet new people, either in training or at races, and share an experience together that is a positive one. I feel like running really gives you a new perspective. And when you start running in your city, you will see things that maybe you didn't notice before when you were always in a car or on the bus or moving around not on your own 2 feet. I found that running has let me see new parks, new forests, new paths that maybe I never would have gone down if I hadn't started running. If you go out and you travel to a new city, you put on your running shoes and you're going to go and check out things that maybe you wouldn't have seen otherwise. Obviously, there are a lot of health benefits to running. You will get stronger cardiovascularly, your legs will become stronger, and you will live longer. So those are the health benefits that you can get if you decide to start running. And the last one is the runner's high. So my son asked me to add this because he's 11 years old and he just started running. I finally convinced him. And he said that what he likes about running is when you finish, a lot of the times you feel like a rush of endorphins. You feel really happy. And we call that a runner's high. And it's to him one of the best feelings. So that's another good reason to start running. Hopefully I've convinced you. All right, I want to share some resources that I like about running. These are not a definitive list. So they're not necessarily about how to run, but they're more about the experience of running, things that I found interesting. If you do a quick Google search, you will find tons of podcasts, tons of books, and tons of movies about running. But I wanted to share some of my favorites with you, things that I've found interesting or entertaining about running. All right, so that is my pitch to you about running. I hope you have been convinced to put on your running shoes and head outside, and I'd be happy to answer any questions or hear your comments about running in general or running in Uzbekistan. I'm ready.
Wow. Thank you so much, Heather. Well, your talk makes me want to go and run right now.
All right. Put on your running shoes and head out.
Okay, so let's move to our questions. Our first question is from Marshall Armstrong. He is saying that he loves running. I cannot imagine my training without it. How can I keep in touch with you? Can you share your email or username or messenger? I don't think we share our speakers' personal information, but once ACT is open, you probably will come to ACT and one day meet Heather here.
Yeah, that would be great. Yeah. I'm always happy to meet other runners.
Okay. Next question from Sharon Lee Hong. What kind of running shoes do you recommend?
Oh, good question. So I have started wearing what are called like zero, I forget what the exact term is, but they usually running shoes have a little bit of a lift in them. Here, let me move here. And I started wearing shoes that are completely flat. So I wear ultra shoes or topo shoes are the two types of shoes that I wear. But running shoes are a really personal thing. So I really recommend if you get the chance to try them on before you buy them, that always helps. Sometimes running stores will let you like put them on and run out in front of the store a little bit just to see which ones fit right. Because if you start in the wrong shoes, you could get blisters, you could get injuries. So it's really important that you take the time to do the research and figure out what's the best shoe for you. But for me right now, it's ultras or topos.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Next question from Eleanor Habinovsky. You said that it's good to have a mantra. What is your mantra?
Oh, good question. Personal question. Let's see. Mine changes, but I think it's usually some variation of stay strong. You can do it. Believe in yourself, but probably stay strong is my biggest one. Mm-hmm. So when I'm doing my smile and saying, stay strong, that's when you know the negative thoughts are coming in my mind.
Okay, thank you. All right, so next question. Do I have to follow a specific diet to be a runner?
Oh, interesting. So I think when you are a runner, it's really important to pay attention just to your nutrition in general. So making sure that you are getting enough to eat, especially if you're going for longer runs. A lot of people like to eat while they run if they're running for more than an hour. So some people use gels, other people use candies or nuts or something that you get calories in because you're burning a lot of calories as you run. And then just making sure that you're eating a balanced diet. And sometimes when you're training, you actually have to be eating more. Again, because you're burning so many calories, a lot of times I would have to remember to bring food with me places because all of a sudden I would find myself really hungry. So that's an important thing to pay attention to because if your nutrition isn't good, then that can hurt your running. And also hydrating, making sure you're drinking enough liquids and water. Sometimes people like to carry water when they're running. Other people prefer just to drink before and after. It depends on your personal preference.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. What makes someone a successful long-distance runner?
That's a good question. I think it's a person who is willing to put in the work. So willing to take the time and do the work that's necessary. It's someone who doesn't give up easily. So isn't stopped by maybe things going wrong or problems. And it's a person who has faith. They believe in themselves and they believe that they can achieve their goal. I think those things are important. And also maybe a little bit of crazy as well, because if you are not a little bit crazy, I think it's hard to be a successful long distance runner.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. All right. Next question. Okay, that's not the one.
Same one. Okay.
Okay. Is it necessary to warm up before a workout and stretch after training?
Yes. And do I do those things? No, unfortunately. So in my mind, I know that yes, it is important to warm up and stretch both before and after running. Especially if you have areas that you have problems with. So for example, I said I have had an injury in my hamstring. And so now I've been trying to be better about before I run, making sure that I warm up just because I don't want to get more injured. But a lot of times that's hard because it takes time. And many times I think, okay, I only have 30 minutes to run. I don't want to take 10 minutes before and 10 minutes after. Then all of a sudden, a 30-minute run becomes an hour-long run. So I think if you are prone to injuries and you know that that's an issue for you, that you should try to definitely stretch before and after. And I am trying to be better about that. So. I'm working on it.
Okay. What is your advice to a beginning runner?
You can do it. Don't give up. So I said some of the things that I think are important, which are to ease into it. So don't go out 100% at once, but try to either run and walk or limit the time or limit the distance, because you want to build up to your success. So that would be my advice, would be to start slowly. And again, try to find friends that can support you and encourage you. I think that always helps a beginning runner. Think about having a goal, maybe a race that you want to run or a distance that you want to run. Make it a habit. So do it the same time every day, or schedule times so that it becomes something that you have on your schedule, and so you'll do it.
Thank you. Marshall Armstrong is asking, where are you now and why? Maybe it's US or Uzbekistan.
Oh, yeah. So I'm in Uzbekistan right now, and I'm here because of my husband's job. So as I said, we move around the world with his job. And right now I'm in Uzbekistan, and I'm looking forward to getting the chance to run here. As Gulshan said, I'm planning on doing the Samarkand half marathon. And then I heard that there's a marathon in March in Tashkent. So maybe I can overcome my injury and be able to do that. So, yeah.
Yeah, awesome. Fakhreddin Bakhriyev is asking, which time is better for running?
So as I said, I am a morning person. So for me, the morning is the best time, because again, I like that feeling of it's finished. I did it and I don't need to worry about it. But sometimes I've found in my training that I run slower in the morning. I think maybe because I haven't woken up yet and my kind of body isn't quite going as fast. Usually I didn't eat breakfast. So if I was doing a workout where I wanted to be fast, I might run later in the day. But for me, the best time is running. Best time is morning for running. But I think it's important for you to figure out what works best for your schedule and for your habits, and then stick to that time. But I'm on team morning.
Thank you. Question from Janara Aripova. What do you think about marathons? Why so many runners love to run for long distances? For me, it's a bit crazy. It's tiring and not always healthy.
Yes. Okay. So I love marathons, and I haven't gone to ultra marathons. To me, ultra marathons are crazy. Marathons are pretty normal. I think the reason why runners love to run for long distances is because of the challenge. So they like that idea of pushing themselves to do something that's difficult. And for some people, that's the half marathon. Other people, that's the marathon. And then the really crazy people, it's like the 100-mile race or the 2-day race. But I think that desire to see where your limit is something that runners share. It's like, how much can I push myself? How far can I go? Where's the limits of my ability? I think that's a desire that we all share. And I agree, it's definitely crazy. And a lot of times I think, why am I doing this? I cannot believe that I'm putting time and effort and money into this. But in the end, that feeling of accomplishing a goal, of, again, seeing how the work that I put in resulted in me being able to do something that maybe I didn't think was possible before, is such a cool feeling. And I love it. But it's definitely crazy.
Thank you. Can I eat before I run?
Sure. Yes, you can eat before you run. I wouldn't eat very much, but I would eat before I ran. So again, as I said, I'm a morning runner, and some people who run in the morning don't eat anything. And for me, I would get too hungry as I was running. So I usually eat like a banana and drink some water before I start running. And for me, that's enough. Like a little bit of food for me to have energy to be able to run. A lot of people find that if they eat a lot before they run, that they get cramps or they're uncomfortable. So I wouldn't eat too much, but I would definitely eat something, because I think running on an empty stomach for me is not a good experience.
Is there anything else that you should or shouldn't do before you go on a run?
Ooh. Before you go, so you should stretch. We went over that. You should eat a little bit, and you should drink a little bit, and shouldn't do. Not that I can think of. No.
Okay, thank you. Marshall Armstrong, is it okay to say a runner to break a leg?
No, I think you only say that to people in the theater. So yeah, no, definitely don't say break a leg to a runner. They would not be happy with that. I think you could just say good luck or have a good race, or don't say break a leg.
Yeah. Okay. How long does it take you to run 100 meters?
A long time. A long time. I'm not a short distance runner. I am a long distance runner. So I can't remember the last time I ran 100 meters, but it would be slow. I can't do short distances.
Okay, thank you. All right, so I don't see any questions so far.
All right, we convinced everybody. That's everybody left to go running. They're putting on their shoes and stretching right now.
Yeah. Okay, Heather, thank you so much. That was a very, very interesting conversation and presentation, and we hope that we'll be able to meet again and for running part 2.
Yes. Oh, definitely. Yes. That would be great. Well, thank you for letting me have the opportunity. I love talking about running. So this was a lot of fun. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you so much. Have a good weekend.
Yep. Have a great run, everybody. Bye.